It's been about 13 years since the release of K Project. From the stunning visuals to the amazing art style to some cool fight scenes, yet we were left with so many unanswered questions in the show. From the pacing, the storytelling, the questionable deaths, and questionable character development. So why did this show become so easily forgettable? Welcome to the channel. My name is Shadow Wolf, and on this channel I cover a series of missed opportunity on anime that aren't widely talked about, that had potential to be a 10 out of 10, but fell fairly short and have gotten lost in the shuffle. And today, I'll be discussing the downfall known as K Project. With that said, let's dive straight in. So in this anime, we take the journey and we get introduced to our main character Mikoto and his lolly companion, followed by his gang known as the Red Clan. And just look at the drip of this gang and the walk, the clothing, everything just stands out about this team. Anyway, him and his gang wreaks havoc on this abandoned building, looking for someone who put a hit on their clan member, before eventually getting intervened by the Blue Clan. Now, fortunately, it cuts there, and we find out that Mikoto isn't our main character after all. And we get introduced to this white-haired guy with zero aura, who was on this school island. Eventually, he finds himself getting chased by the Red Clan as a wanted man, getting ambushed around every corner as they chase him around town, before he eventually gets saved from our mysterious black-haired character, Kuro Yatagami, as he makes quick work of some of the Red Clan members before they just decide to make their escape. But we eventually find out that he wants to also kill this white-haired character as well, before we get this cutscene on the Scantron.
Hey, how you doing? It's a nice night out, isn't it? I came up to film the city lights since it's so clear. It's beautiful. I'm Totoro Totsuka. What's your name?
I, my friend, am the seventh king, the colorless king. I've been out here waiting for someone. Nice night, you say? Yes, it is. A very nice night.
So after the video, we basically find ourselves in this big confusion where he says that that guy isn't him in the video and his name is actually Shiro. And so our main story basically focuses on the Red Gang, the Blue Gang, and the white-haired guy named Shiro. We also find out that Mikoto intentionally let himself get captured and he is put inside a cell, before we get this scene where the Blue King comes in and he gives him a warning saying that if he keeps using his energy, it will repeat the sequence of events from years ago. Basically, every king summons a sword of Damocles in the sky whenever they activate their power. The Red King is basically correct. He's on borrowed time, is basically what he's saying to him. And if it falls out of the sky, it will cause a worldwide catastrophic event causing over 100,000 deaths in a worldwide proximity. Though the problem here with him being locked inside this cell, the rest of the clan members are basically kind of non-existent. They're just kind of running around and just doing their own thing. Some think they understand why Makoto put himself in the cell, and some people don't know what his plans are or why he locked himself in the cell. So we shift our focus back to Shiro and the samurai guy and the mysterious fan service girl who we're just not going to talk about. Because she's just, just too many complaints for this girl. Aside from the nudity, she adds absolutely nothing to the story. They find themselves wandering around the school searching for clues of where Yashiro was at midnight of the events that had transpired. We discover that a lot of things just aren't matching up. Why are there pictures of everyone around the school at the festival, but he's not there? Why can no one recall ever seeing him? There's just a lot of mystery of things that just aren't adding up. We find out that a school classmate had a picture saved as a screenshot of him, but even that didn't get him out of the safe zone. And then eventually he goes back to his dorm and he opens the closet and discovers this body of clothes from that night. The blood stains, just everything is all too familiar. He decides to wander off and run some errands for his classmate and gather fireworks. But then they eventually decide to stumble, and he calls his classmate. And she suddenly mysteriously says she doesn't know of him at all. Then next he decides to call his parents, and they don't even know who he is at all either. It just goes to a mysterious voicemail that says it's out of service. He starts to slowly lose hope of who he is and have doubts about himself as well. The black-haired character Yatsugami also starts to lose hope in him as well. Before they eventually get this big ambush out of nowhere from the Blue Clan, and they find themselves surrounded by this blonde-haired female and a couple of background characters that's basically non-existent. Before the king decides to show himself, and Yatsugami tells Yashiro to make his escape while he tries to hold them off. The situation is looking very grim for them because it's just a one-sided beatdown between him and the Blue King, and the Blue King is really just toying with him. He doesn't even have to draw his sword at all. And the Blue King is asking him, why are you protecting him? You know, he could be playing all of us for a fool, pretending like he doesn't know himself or pretending like he doesn't know what's going on. I mean, why do you think he ran away and left you to fight his battle for him? So Yashiro eventually makes his return, and we think we're going to get this big secret reveal with the white sword appearing in the sky, and then suddenly he just vanishes because it was just an illusion all along. So we finish off the episode with just the three of them trapped in an alley, and they've made their escape, but sadly this is where the big cracks in the show start to really form. We are aware at this point that this girl has powers to make illusions and play with people's memories. So we have her roll back the curtain on the official reveal of who our main character actually is. And if you haven't watched the show at this point, well, this is your chance to tune out now and watch. So basically, the main character, we get this flashback and we find out that the main character had fallen through the roof on the top of the school grounds, and that's when he finally ran into the cat girl. And then that's when a classmate had walked in on them. So she decided to activate her powers and give him false memories. And he's basically been tied down to the school ever since up to that point. Yep, that's the big reveal. They tried to search his memories and see if there was anything else before that point, and it basically just showed him getting kicked off and falling all the way down, so there's really nothing there to help him out. So the situation has changed, and he assumed that that guy in the sky is the one who's causing all of this. So he decides to make a big deal with the Blue King by calling him on a burner phone and telling him that he will turn himself in if they capture the guy in the sky, known as the Silver King, traveling around in a blimp. And then the Blue King just magically agrees because he somehow already suspected the blimp beforehand. Because apparently he's been tracing his flight patterns for a while, and it turns out the past 10 years he has been flying around in the same pattern in the sky all the way up until that day where the Red Clan member got killed. Also, the day they cornered Yashiro and the black-haired guy, they discovered that the blimp was in an odd normal flight pattern as well. So the Blue King decides to make an operation to attack the ship in the sky. But unfortunately, when the ship was surrounded, the Silver King had a plan to blow up his own blimp because he wasn't on there after all, and he already planned for this to happen. Meanwhile, Makoto mysteriously gets baited out while he's in his cell because someone calls him from the school using the same voice, saying that he killed his clan member and will bait out the rest of the team as well and kill the rest of his clan. Mikoto had traced the call all the way back to the school and decides it's finally time for him to break out of the cell. And apparently he's been trapped in that cell for 10 of the 13 episodes of season 1 before finally decide to bust out the cell. Now, the biggest problem here is when you have your show's main character attraction, you can't have him sit on the sidelines for this long. The Blue Clan tries to stop him, but they absolutely have no luck at all. He just uses his aura to push them back and make quick work of the squad. And then he just meets up with his Red Clan. They're glad he's back in the picture, and then they decide to make their way to the school and take over the entire school. They made the announcement that no one is allowed to leave the school until they capture that guy from the video that they're looking for. The Blue Clan shows up and the king sneaks in to speak with Makoto one last time privately, since they're former friends and the audience is left in the dark about this apparently. The Blue King tries to speak to Makoto one last time and try to plead with him and tell him that his sword of Damocles is at its end and he should just step down as king and appoint somebody else as the king while he can to prevent the tragedy from happening when his sword falls. And he says leave it to him to look for the killer and that he can trust his word. But sadly, Makoto decides to turn him down, and we're basically just left with an all-out war between the Blues and the Reds. The brawl breaks out, and we start to notice a few weird signs going on the battlefield. There's a big explosion that happens out of nowhere that doesn't seem to fit the Red Clan's tactics. And we also noticed that Anna almost got sniped from the Blue Clan. So we're seeing signs that somebody is pulling the strings, making the clans do things that aren't normally out of their tactics. So somebody's manipulating the scenes. Debris suddenly fall from this building from an explosion, and the Blue King attempts to save this stranger before he gets stabbed in the chest by this stranger. And we find out it's all a trap set out by this mysterious guy all along. Mikoto eventually finds Yashiro, assuming he was the guy in the phone luring him there. And that's when the Blue King is able to piece all the clues together and decides to swoop in to save him and decide to have a one-on-one fight with Makoto while Shiro gets away. Now, unfortunately, things get extremely worse at this point for the show with another lackluster reveal. And the person who's been pulling the strings all along. So what happens is a classmate tries to stab Yashiro before trying to take over his body, and it fails. And then that's when Yashiro has this memory reveal that he realizes he is the Silver King all along, and the Colorless King is the one that's been manipulating everyone, and he is basically just a tiny vessel that takes over bodies. That's the main villain, a vessel that takes over bodies randomly. That's the big reveal, and that's the true villain of our series, yeah. I feel like the biggest gripe here is that it just feels like a plot device. It would have felt so rewarding to have a legitimate main villain instead of just some random shapeshifter. Honestly, from all the signs up to this point, the assassination of the Makoto clan member, Yashiro having his memory gone, and the bloodstained clothes in the closet, keeping everyone at the edge of their seat guessing, it would have made more sense if the cat girl was the villain all along. She did play with his memories and everyone else's memories after all. But instead we just get this blob that's can take over people's bodies. That's his special power. So to continue on, Yashiro captures the blonde girl with his gravity powers to meet in the office with the Red Clan second in command to discuss calling off the fight between the Blue and the Red Clan and get everyone evacuated off the island. Yashiro himself decides to hunt down that spirit that's taken over people's bodies and decide to intentionally let him take over his body so he can bring him over to Makoto and the Blue King. He decides to let Makoto finish him off in the killing blow, since only a king can kill another king, basically. And once Makoto finishes him off, that causes his sword of Damocles to completely fall and collapse. And right before hitting the floor, that's when the Blue King was forced to kill him, or the sword will destroy over 100,000 people and recreate the calamity. And that's pretty much where our series meets its end. Makoto dies and the red team is gathered together, chanting no blood, no bone, no ash. And the Silver King Yashiro is unknown if he died, since he is immortal. But that basically sums up our entire series. Now, as far as diving into the good of the show, it had some stunning visuals, and after rewatching the show before making this video in the year 2025, the style and music was phenomenal for the show. But as for the bad, a lot of these characters weren't very fleshed out. In Storms of Torresdelling, they basically just fizzled into the background. Only the kings had some form of relevance. The Blue King, the Red King, and the Silver King. Everybody else was just kind of background characters in the show. If you take a show like Bleach and look at the 13 court guard squads, you can see there's a lot of history between each captain and each lieutenant, followed by the other characters. They all hold some weight to the show, and they aren't just sitting in the background known as Character A or Character B holding off the fight until the captain shows up. Or if you look into a show like Bungal Stray Dogs, that holds a lot of similarity with K-Project, Gang Wars, and a clash between clans. The detective agency has about the same members as the Red Clan, except they all hold some sort of value to make you care about each of them, about how important each member is to the team, the brains of the team, the powerhouse, the one who gets the team out of trouble when a catastrophic event happens. They all fulfill important roles without solely relying on the leader giving them orders. And I feel like that's what this show was mostly missing. And then the lackluster villain itself was what really drove the nail in the coffin for this show. And once again, Makoto's death was just... he sat in a cell for 10 episodes just to get killed off. It left us with so many unanswered questions. I mean, he could have stepped down as the king and let someone else step up. Or we could have gotten a lot more development with both of those clan members, the blue and the red, and really fleshed out everyone else. They made 2 more seasons after this, but it's really not worth watching because the damage had already been done. They attempted to make Anna, the little lolly girl, into the king, but after the Red King was gone, the show basically lost all its momentum. But with that said, I'm Shadow Wolf, and I launch an uncover series of missed opportunities in anime. So if you have any anime you recommend I review, that you want me to go over, just leave it in the comment sections. With that said, I'm Shadow Wolf, and I'm signing out.